There comes a time in every person's life when the world no longer feels familiar, not because it has changed, but because you have. This moment, as Carl Jung would suggest, is not random. It is the signal that a deep, unconscious shift is beginning to emerge. And the first signs? They're rarely loud or dramatic. They whisper through discomfort, restlessness, disconnection, or a strange sense that something is ending, though nothing specific has happened yet. Jung believed that the psyche does not evolve in a straight line. Transformation begins in the dark, in confusion, often when you feel most lost. You begin to feel like an outsider in your own life. The job you once loved now feels hollow. Relationships feel strained or artificial. Even your reflection in the mirror might seem unfamiliar. This is not a breakdown. This is the prelude to change. According to Jung, these subtle inner disturbances are not random noise. They are messages from the unconscious, the deeper parts of yourself that you have ignored, silenced, or never truly understood. When you are about to grow, your psyche starts shedding what no longer fits: outdated roles, old beliefs, superficial goals. It can feel like life is falling apart, but it is actually falling into place. One of the first signs of inner transformation is emotional confusion. You feel irritated without knowing why. You want change, but fear it. You crave solitude, but fear being alone. You sense that your current path is wrong, but the next step is hidden. Jung called this enantiodromia, the emergence of the opposite. When you've gone too far in one direction, the unconscious will pull you toward the other. If you've been overly accommodating, a new assertiveness begins to stir. If you've chased external success, a hunger for inner truth will surface. Another subtle sign is the collapse of motivation. What once excited you now feels meaningless. This can feel terrifying, especially in a world that worships constant productivity. But in Jungian terms, this is not laziness or failure. It is withdrawal for the sake of reorientation. Your energy is being reclaimed from things that are no longer aligned with your deeper self. Synchronicities also tend to increase during these times, those odd coincidences that seem charged with meaning. Jung saw these as signals from the unconscious, guiding you toward a new level of awareness. A book falls off a shelf. A stranger says something you needed to hear. Patterns begin to form out of chaos. You are not imagining things. The old self is losing its grip, and a deeper self is beginning to emerge. When your life is about to change, you will encounter something most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid: your shadow. In Carl Jung's theory, the shadow is the hidden side of your personality, the emotions, desires, and impulses you reject, suppress, or pretend don't exist. But when transformation is near, the shadow doesn't stay quiet. It knocks at the door, hard. This is what's often called the dark night of the soul. You begin to feel haunted by parts of yourself you don't recognize. Resentment, jealousy, anger, fear. Emotions that used to be neatly controlled start leaking through the cracks. You might lash out, withdraw, or feel overwhelmed by waves of sadness or anxiety. You begin to realize this pain is not new. It's been waiting, buried inside you, waiting for this moment. Jung believed that the confrontation with the shadow is essential. Without it, there is no real growth. In fact, he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You can't simply meditate or journal your way into a new self without first facing what you've avoided. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It contains the truth about who you really are, not just the polished version you show the world, but the messy, complicated, fully human version you try to hide. And when you suppress it for too long, it erupts, sometimes in the form of a breakdown, sometimes through an identity crisis, sometimes in destructive behavior you don't even understand. But here's the paradox. The moment you begin to accept your shadow is the moment you reclaim your power. You are no longer a prisoner of it. You begin to choose rather than react. You feel more grounded, more honest, more real. And that authenticity, that self-awareness, is the soil in which transformation grows. People often report that during this stage, they feel like their world is crumbling. But it's not the world. It's the illusion of control, perfection, or certainty that's dying. You begin to grieve the self you once were, not because it was bad, but because it was incomplete. And in that grieving, space is made for something new to emerge. You may start asking deeper questions. Who am I beyond my roles? What do I truly want? Why am I afraid of being seen fully? These are not signs of falling apart. They are signs of waking up. The shadow doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to demand your honesty. It comes to strip away everything false, so that what's real can finally rise. As you move deeper into transformation, something begins to fracture. Not violently, but undeniably. The routines that once gave you a sense of structure begin to feel meaningless. The identities you've worn so comfortably, the achiever, the caregiver, the pleaser, start to suffocate you. You find yourself questioning everything, your goals, your relationships, even your thoughts. And then, the most startling realization hits. Many of the patterns you've lived by were never really yours to begin with. Carl Jung emphasized that so much of what we do is driven by unconscious programs, inherited beliefs from family, culture, religion, and society. When you begin to truly wake up, these patterns start to collapse, not because you're rebelling, but because they no longer resonate. You see clearly that you've been performing a version of yourself, and suddenly the script no longer fits. This disorientation is both terrifying and liberating. It's the moment when your ego, the identity you've built over time, begins to lose control. The ego wants order, familiarity, and recognition. But your deeper self, the self, in Jungian terms, wants truth and wholeness, and truth often begins where comfort ends. You may find yourself withdrawing from people you used to spend every weekend with. You might lose interest in conversations that once felt exciting. You begin to crave solitude, not out of sadness, but because your mind is rearranging itself. It needs space. You need space. In this phase, people often experience what Jung called liminality, the space between what was and what will be. It's like being in a hallway with all the doors closed behind you, and none yet open ahead. You are no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. This is not a place of clarity. It is a place of raw potential. And then, something strange happens. The external world starts reflecting your internal shifts. You may begin to encounter sudden endings. Jobs disappear. Friendships dissolve. Unexpected opportunities fall through. At first, it feels like life is punishing you. But in hindsight, you realize it was redirecting you. This is the cracking of reality, the loosening of everything rigid, false, or outdated. It's not destruction, it's preparation. The universe, your psyche, whatever word you prefer, is clearing the space for something more aligned. And though it feels chaotic, there's an invisible intelligence to it all. As Jung once noted, in all chaos, there is a cosmos, in all disorder, a secret order. You begin to see synchronicities everywhere. The same message appears in multiple places. You meet someone who says exactly what you needed to hear. You open a book to a page that reads like it was written for you. These are not accidents. They are signposts. And their message is simple. You're on the path. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. The pain of letting go, of shedding your old skin, is real. It hurts to unlearn. It hurts to evolve. But every broken pattern is a portal. Every collapsed belief is a doorway. And beyond that doorway lies a life that is not just different. It is more true. After the breaking comes the becoming. Slowly, quietly, something within you begins to rise. Not as an idealized version of who you should be, but as the most honest version of who you truly are. This is the moment Jung spoke of when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this becoming does not happen with a loud declaration. It begins in whispers, subtle changes, gentle nudges, new awareness that guides you toward authenticity. You begin to act differently, not because you're trying to be different, but because the old ways simply don't fit anymore. You stop apologizing for your presence. You set boundaries that would have terrified you before. You begin to say no, not from anger, but from clarity. You say yes to things that nourish you, even if others don't understand. This stage is often marked by a strange, bittersweet emotion. Grief mixed with peace. You grieve who you were, the roles you played, the masks you wore, the people you tried to please. But beneath that grief is something solid and calm. It's you, not the reactive self, not the conditioned self, but the centered, integrated self that knows its value without performance. Relationships change. Some people fall away, not because of conflict, but because resonance fades. You are no longer vibrating on the same frequency. But in their place come connections that are deeper, more honest, more aligned. Conversations feel richer. Silence feels safer. You find yourself drawn to people and spaces that honor who you're becoming, not who you used to be. And here's what might surprise you. The chaos no longer rattles you the way it once did. Life still throws curveballs. Pain still visits, but you meet it differently. Instead of resisting, you observe. Instead of clinging, you release. This is not detachment in the cold sense. It is awareness. You recognize that everything passes, and in that recognition, you discover an inner freedom that no one can take away. You may notice you're not as reactive. The small things don't control your mood anymore. You're no longer driven by the need to be liked or to prove yourself. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop abandoning yourself in the name of acceptance. Creativity often blooms here. You begin to express in ways you never dared before. Writing, painting, speaking, building, dreaming. Not for applause, but because your soul is finally breathing. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, was not just psychological, but deeply spiritual. It's not just about healing the past. It's about bringing your essence into the world. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust yourself. Not blindly, but with presence. You begin to notice your inner signals, the subtle yes and no that lives beneath logic. You move with intention. You begin to feel like life isn't something happening to you, but through you. This emergence is not a destination. It's a rhythm, a dance. Some days you'll feel aligned. Other days, you'll still doubt. That's okay. The point is not perfection, it's honesty. You are now living closer to your truth. And that truth, however quiet, has power. At this point in your transformation, something shifts profoundly. Not in your external circumstances, but in your understanding of freedom. You begin to realize that true freedom does not come from escaping duties, avoiding consequences, or denying your pain. It comes from taking full responsibility for your life. And that's not as heavy as it sounds. In fact, it's the lightest you'll ever feel. Carl Jung once said, "We are not what happened to us. We are what we choose to become." This is where that truth sinks in. You stop blaming your past. You stop waiting for someone to save you. You stop outsourcing your worth, your purpose, your choices. And instead, you take ownership. Not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. This kind of responsibility is not about control. It's about alignment. It's the understanding that while you may not be at fault for your wounds, you are responsible for your healing. And that shift in perspective changes everything. You no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstances, but as a co-creator of your reality. You start asking different questions. What part of me allowed this? What boundary did I ignore? What truth did I silence? These questions are not meant to punish you. They're meant to empower you. They move you from reaction to reflection, from helplessness to choice. You begin to realize that your energy is precious. Your time is sacred. Your attention is a currency. And so, you stop giving it away to people, habits, and beliefs that drain you. This doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming discerning. You act from clarity, not from compulsion. You stop saying yes out of guilt and start saying yes out of desire. You no longer betray yourself to belong. There's a maturity that arrives with this responsibility. You become more grounded, more present. You stop chasing highs and start building roots. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Not your intelligence, not your goodness, not your strength. You've lived through enough to know that proving is a mask, and masks always slip. In this phase, many people begin to refine their purpose. It's not always grand or public. Sometimes it's deeply personal, raising a conscious child, healing a lineage, starting a community, creating art that matters. Whatever it is, it comes from within, not from expectation. It's not about being impressive. It's about being real. And here's the paradox. The more responsibility you take, the freer you become. You're no longer shackled to the opinions of others. You don't collapse under failure or inflate with success. You become anchored, not rigid, but stable. You know who you are, what you value, and what you're here to do. This freedom is subtle, but powerful. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's magnetic. People feel it in your presence. They feel your peace, your clarity, your quiet strength, and many will be drawn to it. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from rejecting our shadow, but from integrating it. And this stage of your journey is exactly that. Integrating all of you, the light and the dark, the joy and the pain, the strength and the softness. When you stop running from parts of yourself, you finally become whole. This is what true transformation looks like. Not a brand new version of you, but a deeply honest one. Not all transformations are loud. In fact, the most profound ones rarely are. When your life is about to change, or already has, the world may not notice right away. But you will. Not through dramatic epiphanies, but through subtle, often quiet signs that whisper, "You're becoming whole." Carl Jung often spoke of wholeness, not as perfection, but as integration. To be whole doesn't mean to never feel fear, anger, or doubt. It means you're no longer ruled by them. You see them, hold them, understand them, and then choose how to respond. You stop fighting against yourself. That internal war, between what you feel and what you show, between what you need and what you allow, begins to end. One of the first signs is inner peace. Not the peace that depends on everything going well, but the peace that remains even when things go wrong. You don't spiral the way you used to. You're still human, pain still comes. But now you meet it with compassion, not panic. You know that this too shall pass. You've been through enough to know that storms don't last, and your roots are deeper now. Another sign: clarity. You begin to see people and situations for what they are, not what you want them to be. This doesn't make you cynical. It makes you wise. You stop chasing potential. You start choosing reality. You no longer tolerate relationships that drain you just because you're afraid of being alone. You'd rather be at peace by yourself than in chaos with someone else. Your values crystallize. You know what matters to you, and you live like it. No more bending to please everyone. No more abandoning your truth to avoid discomfort. You speak honestly. Even when your voice shakes, you make decisions that align with your integrity, not your insecurity. And though this may make your circle smaller, it makes your life infinitely fuller. You also become more present, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. You're no longer lost in constant overthinking or regret or future fantasies. You start to savor ordinary moments, the way sunlight hits your skin, the calm of a quiet morning, the feeling of deep conversation. These things used to pass you by. Now they ground you. And perhaps most importantly, you stop needing to become someone. You realize you already are. You're not chasing an ideal. You're uncovering the truth. You peel back the layers of fear, guilt, expectation. And underneath, you find something steady, something calm, something powerful, you. Jung believed that every human has within them the seed of the self, the whole true essence of who we are. And when we stop performing, stop hiding, stop fearing, that seed begins to grow. Slowly, steadily, we become ourselves again. Not who the world taught us to be, but who we were before the world interfered. You no longer fear solitude. You embrace it. You don't need noise to distract you anymore. You've made peace with silence, because in it, you meet yourself. And in that meeting, you realize you were never broken, only buried. So if you find yourself feeling lighter, calmer, clearer, if the world feels less like something to survive and more like something to walk through with awareness, know this: your life is already changing. Not because everything outside is perfect, but because everything inside is aligning. You are becoming whole. And that is the most powerful change of all.